Hi everyone, welcome to the Prime Use series of interviews with top business and technology experts. I'm Dana Kohut, and today I'm delighted and honored to welcome Or Weis, who is CEO and co-founder at Permit.io. Welcome back to the Prime View. It's a great pleasure to see you again and to have this opportunity to chat with you.
The pleasure's all mine, really. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I recently saw that you became a dad. Is that right?
Yeah, I have a cute 3 months old child, baby boy named Ari. And yeah, parenthood gives you a lot of perspective on life. It's challenging, but also teaches you a lot. It's kind of like running a startup when you think about it.
I bet it is. Yeah, so you have to learn a lot of new skills, right? And managing your time and other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of the skills like time management definitely works on both sides. Also, handling stress, handling uncertainty. I think the more I think about it, there's a lot in common between the two. But yeah, raising a human being, as it's also unique challenges to it, of course.
Yeah, but also, yeah, as you said, that it can be, in a way, it can be compared to, running a startup. And you have a great experience in that, right? So you must be making a great dad of a new baby boy.
I try my best. I think it's too early to say. It's only 3 months in, but so far the kid's alive. He's growing. I'm always impressed with how quickly he delivers new features to production. So like a week ago, he was only just like fumbling with his hands, and now he has like fine dexterity, like he can grab things and move them, and that's like, wow, that's amazing. Well, human learning, which is kind of like machine learning, but maybe more less explainable than we have in machine learning, even though that's also not very explainable.
Yeah, I love these analogies that you're making, right? About releasing new features and new things, right? And how fast they are growing, right? Actually, how they are learning new things.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I've always, as an engineer, it's almost impossible for me to look at things and not put on the engineering lens. And yeah, I always like those kind of things.
Or for those who might have missed our previous interview, right? Maybe you could just like quickly provide an overview what permit does, right? And what kind of problems you're trying to solve to your customers.
Yeah, for sure. So it's very, very straightforward. If you have ever used a piece of software before, you've noticed that there's permissions baked into that, both enforcing them and experiences to manage them. So things that you've seen a billion times, like user management with the ability to assign roles, API key management, audit logs. So the ability as a vendor to see what your customers did, the ability to enable each of your customers to see what they did. Approval flows, invites, and this list just goes on and on. Things that are super common to every product. The sad fact is, every time you saw it, some poor schlep of a developer had to create those from scratch, and probably more than once. I, for example, created this 5 times for a company that wasn't even 3 years old with my previous venture, Rookout, and probably thousands of times throughout my career. So with Permit, we're coming with a very basic premise. You should never have to build this crap again. We're taking permissions off the table so you as a developer can focus on actually building your core product. And we make it so by both providing you with the infrastructure components, by basically a microservice for authorization, the APIs and SDKs that you can embed this easily into your software, and no less importantly, the interfaces themselves. So you can control this and delegate this to your other stakeholders and your customers themselves.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's something that, that comes also from your experiences. You said that in your previous startup, Rookout, you built it so many times, you got really, kind of you could feel the pain, right?
Yeah, it's pain, frustration, annoyance. Like I found that it's constantly kept surprising me. Like there were multiple times that I said, okay, I'm a good engineer, I know my stuff, I've provided this version, it's gonna last. I'm not gonna touch this thing ever again. And then you get a slap in the face when a new requirement comes in. Like some of those can be very surprising. So, for example, we had a business partner, Cisco, coming in and asking for their own back office.
Okay.
So I had to now maintain 2 back offices. And I was like, I didn't think of that requirement when I designed it. I didn't make it elastic enough to support that.
Okay.
And it's really hard to make something as generic, as elastic to cover all the cases unless you specifically focus on it. And in general, in this area, there's a lot of room for mistakes that can be very costly, both in how much R&D resources you have to reinvest into this, but also in being secure and compliant. In the end of the day, access control is guarding a lot of our most sensitive stuff.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And you know this, so I would be curious to know, how do you actually drive a demand for your product, right? So I believe there are like a lot of companies, right, in this permission and security space, right? Some of them would say, hey, we have this in-house expertise, we are reliable, right? Or we are so easily customized, right? So depending on your domain or your industry, you can customize our solution to your unique business case, right? What is it about you, your solution, that actually differentiates you in the market?
So first of all, we are part of a new category. So up till now, there were a lot of new products around identity management and authentication. Authentication is probably the most known one. So products like Auth0 and Cognito on AWS and OneLogin and Super Tokens and Fusion Auth and Clerk Dev and a really long list of products right now. But authentication is very different. Authentication is identifying who's the identity you're working with. You're still left with the challenge of enforcing and deciding what they can do within your software. So that's a separate problem called authorization or permissions, and that's what we're tackling. Sometimes people confuse the two, even just because authentication and authorization, they're both off and sound alike. But it is very different, and there's a lot of work to be done in the enforcement side itself and defining the policies. People also usually have something that they've homebrewed themselves. Just like me, I've built this like thousands of times, as I've said, and you have something in place, and it's good for a while, but then there are points where new requirements come in from your customers, your stakeholders, and you need to rebuild this. And that's when we try to be available for our customers when they need this. We're not trying to push our product on anyone. I really think that's an annoying way for providing any product, and especially a developer tools product. So we're just trying to make ourselves as available as possible, make people know about this option. So when they come to the crossroads, when they need to decide, okay, am I rebuilding this or am I going to spend a lot of time upgrading this? So they'll also be able to consider the option of using our solution or our open source product. And in the end of the day, our go-to-market strategies, what I like is what's called product-led growth. So we put the product up front, we try to remove as much friction as possible, and we trust that our customers are smart people that have good priorities in mind, and that they realize that this is not something that is unique to any product, and that they'll be mostly wasting their time on building this as opposed to actually building their core product. So bottom line, we're just trying to put our offering out there and make it as accessible as possible.
Okay, those are great points, right? And I believe very important in your domain. I was, a lot of customers, I imagine that they might not be able to correctly assess whether they understand or they enforce their security in the right way, right? So you might think that everything is checked, and there can be plenty of, like a space for mistakes or for some vulnerability. Do you offer any kind of education to your customers to help them use your product, or what from that perspective?
Yeah, so in general, we try to generate a lot of content that is supporting here. I've given several talks at organizations like Open Security Summit and OWASP, covering both the best practices and the common pitfalls that people do. I just talked to some colleagues at AWS, and so to kind of bring 2 points together. So we both recognize that there's a lot of friction point with how people use their cloud solution. So, for example, a lot of people see the IAM options within AWS and say, "Oh, someone has built an amazing policy and authorization component in AWS. I can just write on that." And a lot of people use, for example, the permissions for their S3 buckets as ways to enforce permissions for their product. But that coupling doesn't last, because when you need to bring in a new data layer, or when the permissions on how S3 buckets are changed, by the way, they just released a change on that, it can dramatically affect how you work. And in general, it's a bad idea to couple the infrastructure layer and the application layer. Another example is misusing JSON Web Tokens. People kind of say, "Oh, I can add more elements, more claims on the JSON Web Token, so I can push the roles into there, or maybe even the routes in my application. I'll just list them in the JSON Web Token." And that also works well for a point in time until you fill it up and it starts to be non-performant, or you can scale it up and add more things in. So these are examples of things that we try to highlight for our customers, things that seem to be great ideas at the get-go, but then you end up regretting them later. And on top of that, what we try to do is provide easy alternatives. We, as I said, removing the friction as much as possible. So getting started with our product or with our open source offering should be as close to a no-brainer as possible. And ideally, I think these are things that most developers should learn. Like, you should be aware of the best practices, friction points with building authorization. But I don't think it's fair to ask everyone to become experts and specialized in this field. So you should have the baselines, but you should also be able to delegate some of this, pardon my French, crap to someone else, so you can focus on the things that you're truly an expert in, the core parts of your product.
Okay, those are important things. And I've noticed that recently you have launched permit elements, right? It's a new thing that you have introduced to the market, which actually allows developers, right, offer to their customers, manage their permissions. And at this point, it begs the question, like, isn't it something that permit is paid for? Why would the customers want to manage their own permissions? Isn't it something that they actually delegate to you?
So the idea is that we definitely manage the permissions for you, but the question is how you interact with those permissions and control plane that we've created for you. Do you want yourself as a developer to manage every little thing? Like, if you need a new configuration, if you want a new role in the system, if you want a new sub permission, if you want new attributes for ABAC, if you want to invite new users, should everything go through you as a developer? The answer is probably no. I've got better things to do. So the question is, how do you empower the other stakeholders, and how do you empower the customers themselves to work with this? So that's why we are creating low-code, no-code interfaces that I like to say a monkey can use, or even a product manager. Product managers, by the way, like that joke the most. Yeah. And so you, as a developer, you can bake this in and delegate this to the other parties. And another cool thing about permit elements is that it really takes off additional tasks that you have. So it's not enough to just have enforcement in your code and have APIs to manage this. You need to provide experiences for other people, even if you don't want to delegate. In the end of the day, you need to have, they need to have some sense of control in the product, even if you don't want to give them too much. So instead of building these things over and over, like a user management table with roles, what's so unique about your product that you need to build that from scratch? And one of the cool things with permit elements is that you can use them independent of the whole permit framework. If you just need the UI component, if you just need approval flows, for example, this is something that is complicated to build on just on the front end side. You want to have one user be able to trigger an action, have that action hold, get another user to approve it, and then execute that action. So that flow, both on the API side and on the front end side, is something cumbersome to build. Think about the sending the email, sending the SMS message to that other user, and getting the users to have a simplified and easy enough user experience so they can work with that. Why build that? Is that something that's unique to your product? No. And you can, at least if you want to start and have that, you can just plug in that front-end component. And you don't even have to adopt everything. You can initially connect it to your just basic authorization that you've built. So we give you building blocks that you can gradually decide how you mix and match and how you use them. And they all come with best practices that gradually enable you to build things bigger and better while focusing on what's important to you, which is your product.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree with you. And from your perspective, so I really like the point, I like to circle back to this, like software developers being responsible for building their product, and at the same time, now they are also responsible for the security elements, right? Enforcing security into their code and responsible for the permissions. From your perspective, I can guess the answer, right? That it's something that is inseparable right now. But from your perspective, why is it important that developers are in charge, right? And from what you are offering with permit elements, it's that also other teams, they can actually tap on security. They can take the responsibility for the policies in their kind of area of responsibility.
So first of all, I think any product that you build, any project that you work on, if it's something significant, it's a joint effort. It's a group effort. You need everyone to chime in on the conversation to get something to the right level of quality to survive in this mad world where constant new technologies are springing out and scale is constantly increasing. So developers have to be involved in the conversation, but also the other stakeholders, security, compliance, the product managers, professional services, sales. In the end of the day, and especially with access control, it's a set of experiences that are critical for the product to function, and everyone touches on them just from different perspectives. So it's not about taking on all of the responsibility. It's about taking the relevant responsibility and connecting it to the work of other people in a way that generates growth and speeds up everyone's collaboration together. But in the end of the day, developers have to be involved with the security aspect, because in the end of the day, it's in the fundamentals of how a system is designed and built that security comes into play. Security can't be applied as an afterthought, and authorization can't be applied as an afterthought, because then it won't work. You have to build it from the ground up. You don't have to build it completely from day one, but you have to design it in. Otherwise, you'll always have gaps. So that's why developers have to be cognizant and highly involved in this process. But that doesn't mean that they have to take on all of the responsibility and all of the work. They should be the ones that set the design and then empower other people to build and iterate on it. And that's where I think the conversation needs to go from highly code interfaces and APIs to low code, no code interfaces. And one of the things that we do with Permit that I think really emphasizes this is our policy editor, which is obviously a code product that is no code, meaning the people using it don't have to understand code, but it generates code. So it's a no-code solution that generates policy as code. So in the end of the day, the source of truth is configuration as code, policy as code, residing in a Git repository that the developers can dive into and have full confidence in. But there are interfaces to generate that code that are available for people that are non-coders. So everyone can chime in on the conversation just with the right interface, with developers kind of tightening the loop where it needs to be tightened.
Okay, so sounds really cool. And a couple of minutes ago, you mentioned that this kind of permission environment is really prone to mistakes, right? And it's very important to have this kind of elasticity and ability to build in And it's something that from your past experience at Rookout that you had to rebuild it from scratch several times because you could not kind of foresee some of new requirements like collaboration with Cisco and other things. So I would be curious to know, how can you introduce or leverage machine learning and artificial intelligence in building permissions and security, right? Right now, it's a huge hype with Chat GPT, right? That we're, it's many consider being a developer tool or something. So from your perspective, what could be the best practices of leveraging ML and artificial intelligence in security space?
That's a terrific question. So I have, I think, three different things to kind of highlight here. So one, we've been toying with generative AI as an interface for generating your policies. So I already mentioned we have a low-code, no-code interface where you can author policies through. That it's currently kind of a check boxes and a bit of drag and drop, but it can work as well as kind of a text prompt interface. You can tell your AI, okay, I need a policy where only paying admins can access this specific file in these specific times. That can be translated into settings in a UI that you can then audit and review yourself as a human. And that can be generated into code that can be tested and benchmarked according to the highest standards. So you can have simplified interfaces that kind of layer in together in a way that still provides visibility and an understandability into how the system works, even though you're working with an opaque component like an AI. So I think in the end of the day, machine learning and AI, and specifically generative AI, can be another interface for us humans to define what we need, how we want to design our security, and have that connect with our classic tools like policy as code. So that's one thing. And that's something that we've been already toying with. I feel like it would be better for us to launch it later down the road, so not to confuse people. But that's, I think, a key part of how these interfaces would look in the future as these AI engines become more commonplace and expected. The second thing is just a lot of common stuff actually that we've been doing for years. So for example, anomaly detection. AI is really great for that. Even basic AI with like collaborative filtering or with just clustering can give you a lot of insights that just basic rules or policies cannot. And actually, we have a basic feature like that baked into Permit. So the idea is that the more people that use Permit to build a standard for their permissions, you gain better security through those components that we bake in. So we provide basically user behavior analytics for all of our customers, even without them being aware of it. So by managing permissions with us, we're able to track the behavior of your customers. We don't know anything about the customers. We don't know what they're actually doing, but we are seeing the unique IDs that are changing. So we know, oh, he's doing that again, or he's doing that, or that something different at these points in time. And that can be easily mapped into anomaly detection. And that can be floated up to you as a vendor. So you can easily see
the unusual activity, right? And this can trigger some like permission, like prohibition, right? Revoking some of the permits.
Yeah, or even just being aware that a user has been compromised. The account has been taken over, or it's now the person behind it is now acting maliciously or differently than before. That's something that you as a vendor would want to know, your customer as an organization want to know, and the person behind that account would want to know that. And we can provide you that information without you sharing any of the private data with us. And that's something that I think is really cool. We can provide a baseline for security, for how users interact with the system for everyone. And the more people use this, the better picture we have on how users behave and how we can share it between the organizations. So that's really something that is, I think, very commonplace. We've had this technology for a while. We just lacked the standards. There wasn't a common way to build access control. So everyone was reinventing it from scratch. So they were getting later to the more advanced features like anomaly detection, and no one was sharing how they were building that, how they were looking on the data and training sets that you can produce here. So we're in a really unique vantage point to provide that as a standard to our customers. Like JSON web tokens become a standard for authentication, I think using an interface like Permit to manage your authorization would become a standard thanks to those baselines. And lastly, and I think maybe it's kind of a really different point, I think machine learning also affects dramatically how we build authorization. So up till now, mostly when you were building applications, you were catering to human users. But more and more, your application is being used by other applications, by other machine learning agents that are using the API, which themselves are also used by machine learning agents, which are potentially also being used by other machine learning agents. And it's basically APIs and agents all the way down. And these agents work in a much higher speed and with much higher complexity than your average human user. So the way you create permissions from them has to meet that velocity and complexity as well. So it's not only that we have better tools with AI for ourselves, we also have bigger challenges because of AI around security and access control. So you need those better tools, and you need them to be as fast and as performant as the AIs themselves that are coming into the picture.
Yeah, those are great answers, and it's great to know that you have actually already baked in, as you said, as a basic element of your product, right? AI component that can detect malicious intentions or unusual activity of any user, right? That can compromise your sensitive data that you have at your organization, which is fantastic.
And again, one of the cool things there that I'm really proud of is the hybrid approach. You can use Permit, and you can use Opal, our open source project, without sharing the PIIs, without sharing the sensitive data. A lot of our customers are healthcare organizations and fintech organizations. There's a lot of sensitive information there. So if we had to be exposed to all of the actual user details and all the actual parts of the software, there would be a lot of compliance friction. But we've designed a system to decouple that. We're able to work with the metadata instead of the data itself. And that creates a more secure infrastructure at its baseline. It's not there isn't one point where all of the sensitive data is kind of aggregated, and but we can still provide all of those interfaces, both to save you work and to make your end product more secure.
Okay, and I think that's a great differentiator for Permit, right? That you can actually access all of the, so you can instill all the best security practices and policies without being exposed or to the sensitive data of organization. And as you said, in healthcare specifically, where they have lots of different compliances, right, like HIPAA and others, it can be a differentiator, I believe, on the market.
Yeah, maybe I'm still kind of trying to understand, like 60% of our customers now are like healthcare organizations.
Wow.
And I don't know why exactly, like why it's healthcare more than fintech, for example. But I'm happy for customers, and I'm happy to be HIPAA compliant for them, and I'm happy to build this in a way that is suitable for their needs.
Yeah, great. And so that's, that actually begs the next question is about your market strategy, right? And how do you plan to acquire and retain your current customers, right? So if you could share that information with us.
Yeah, so we kind of touched on it before. So getting to new customers, it's really with developers, it's really around a lot of word of mouth, and it's really about making the product accessible and available in the different watering holes where developers kind of gather together to learn about new tools. So we really try to invest in that. With the right conferences, the right pieces of content, we try to make ourselves available when people are researching on authentication, on authorization, on permissions. We try to be as available as possible there. Regarding retaining our customers or enabling them to grow with us, it's really about, I think, providing a good product, and B, being there for them. Something that is cool, I think, about us is both our community and how approachable we try to be. So we have a Slack community, and I invite people to join there. If you go to Permit.io, there's a Slack icon on the right, on top right. You can just join our Slack community, and you can see that we answer people both in paying customers, free tier customers, open source customers. We answer almost all of them within minutes. Because we view everyone working with us as a real customer that we care about and we want to help. And also we learn a lot from those interactions. And so that's one thing. And another one is how easy it is to reach out to us. So there's on the same side, there's a schedule a call with us, and like I or Philip or Devrel, someone else from the team would show up. Just click a button, pick a time, and we'll be there.
Fantastic.
And we won't pitch you anything. It's extremely rare that I try to sell the product on a call. First of all, most people coming to talk with us already kind of try the product, so I don't need to. But in general, I prefer to listen to what you need and how I can help you. So I find myself on a lot of calls just talking about permissions in general, learning about the architecture or design that a specific customer is working on, and trying to think out, okay, how we can help, or how can introduce you to best practices or open source tools that will help you tackle that. And I really believe that's the right philosophy. I really believe that developers are smart people that appreciate good content, good products, and actual value, as opposed to just marketing fluff. So you won't find any marketing fluff or sales abrasiveness from us.
Yeah, I love this customer centricity, right? That first of all, like being approachable. And that is something very important, I believe, in modern world, right? That you just can click and set up appointment and maybe discuss some of the challenges that you're facing at your organization, and see how actually, if there is a fit for you, maybe to work together, right? If you can solve their challenges, problems.
Yeah, and even if there isn't a fit, we can learn from each other. We can improve our experiences as developers, as security engineers and practitioners. And I think that's important by itself.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Okay, or my last question is about your team, right? Right now in technology world, there is a huge, wave of layoffs, and the market will probably be filled with great people, right? Experienced people, and some of them might want to join your company. So, and be part of a great startup. What type of people, professionals, you're looking to bring to your organization, right? To foster that innovation culture.
Yeah, essentially at this point in time, the company has two core fronts, R&D and DevRel, and a little bit of marketing. So we're trying to hire always good engineers that can work both on our open source offering and on our core product, backend engineers, front-end engineers. There's also, I think, one DevOps position open, but mostly backend and front-end. That's the focus that we're hiring for now. And on the DevRel side, yeah, and that's something that I'm really passionate about. Developers that want to communicate with other developers, creating content, creating conversations, creating talks. It requires a unique skill set, right? Because you need to both be a good engineer, but you also need to be willing and open to spend a little less time on code. You still like build test projects, code projects, solutions on top of Permit to kind of show the value, but you also focus on communicating. And I think this is a great opportunity for developers that want to change in their profession, just maybe for a while, or ones that want to go into entrepreneurship later, or into DevRel as a profession. I think it's a really exciting and growing space, and it's I think a great alternative for like a lot of the developers that get tired from like writing code to go to be like product managers. I think product management is further away from the technology than DevRel, or dev advocacy. So I think that's a good alternative that not most developers consider.
I got it. Yeah, totally agree. And I believe it's probably quite rare mix of, you know, kind of skills, being a great developer and also being very communicative, but maybe I'm a bit more stereotypical, right? So I would have this image, you know, of a software developer just, you know, being happy sitting alone in the room and just coding. But I believe there are plenty of people who can actually communicate effectively and evangelize new products, right? And new features that are being released.
Right.
Absolutely. Great. Or thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed our discussion, and I believe our listeners will learn a lot about Permit and about your product, and they will be happy to use it. And, you know, as you said, with a word of mouth to promote it further, right, to the market. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, and I invite everyone to reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, GitHub, everywhere else as Or Weis, ORWEIS. And I look forward to talking with you again and new people.
Thank you, Or.